Almost ready, folks. One more second. Okay. I think that's it. I think I've got everything ready. Got chat on this side. I've got the call over here. I've got a notepad down here. Welcome in, folks. Prosium on Twitch. How you doing? Good to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. I hope everyone is having a good Sunday. I've got my coffee. I'm ready to go today. Hope you're all doing well. And that your Sunday so far is treating you well. I'm going to take a sip here, and I'll just do the introduction on what this stream is going to be about, and then we'll have our guest on. Nice. I'm doing amazing. I'm going to get a Huel Brewing and enjoy the show. Nice, Prosium. Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it. So, just as kind of a light intro into some of the things I've been talking about. Look, I've essentially said two things that I think are going to be relevant here. I'm not really going to get into it too much. I'm not going to push back on our guest up here, Lukasz. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I practiced it a little bit, but I kind of want Lukasz to give his perspective more than my perspective, because I have a soapbox to get on all the time, and I can talk to people. But one of the things that I talk about is the nature of how ideology drives a lot of the programming that we do in this day and age. And ideology does not belong in code. Code does not care about your ideology. It does not care about your societal leanings. It doesn't really care who you are. Those things are not relevant to the code. There are certain things that are relevant to the code, but they are most definitely not ideologically based. So we're going to talk about that. And then I also do not like how obfuscated and abstracted and complex things have become. We have very simple solutions in front of us. So I kind of look at Rust with a questionable judgment as to whether it's more beneficial than, I don't know, than not, let's say. And I know I have some people who love Rust here, and I'm going to make it clear to Lukasz too, and I'll make it clear right now as well. I'll say it again. I'm not an expert in Rust. I've never used it professionally. I'm actually not sure how many people have, to be honest with you. I know a few people have, but yeah. So I'm going to be asking questions like purely out of ignorance, quite legitimately. I'm ignorant to a lot of what Rust does. I've been trying to figure it out. I've been comparing it with C a lot and trying to figure out things that I can create with C that I can't do with Rust for some reason or another. And I use the word can't loosely here. So we're gonna dig into that, and I'll give a little bit of pushback, but ultimately I kind of want Lukasz here to explain his side, his perspective, his view on things. I do think ultimately I'm going to have an issue with hitching my wagon on a language that is driven by people who are driven mostly ideologically, no matter what the ideology is. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But like I said, this is not like it's not a debate. I'm not going to be, having a have it out argument. It'll be more like my discussion with Prozium yesterday, with Eric there, and we're just going to talk. Just get perspectives, and I'll ask some questions, and that's that. Pure Ambrosia, good to see you. How you doing, Pure? It's been a hot minute since I've seen you on Twitch side there. Battle says if I didn't suck, I wouldn't be here. Think about it. I have indeed nurtured a vast number of viewers who do indeed suck. This is the community I've nurtured. And I guess this is what I get, Battle. I guess it's my fault. It's what I get. I take full responsibility for your suckiness. I don't know. I kind of knew, right? And I still let you be a mod. I even let you be a mod. My terms are acceptable. Nice. So, one more time for all the viewers who are pouring in here. We're already up to 20 pretty fast here across the different platforms. Again, I appreciate all the support, including especially the subs that were dropped yesterday on Twitch. The financial support means a lot. I'm one man. I pay for everything myself. When I do the daily tech news, I have to go and find all my own articles. I have to take, I'm not kidding when I say it's like 4 hours at least a day getting the daily tech news together for your benefit, because I think it's important to cover these topics so you guys can be informed about everything that I think is important in the industry. So the financial support it really helps. I really do appreciate it. On the YouTube side, I'm not monetized yet. So there's not much you guys can do over there. But even though you can't, the only thing I would ask during the interview, which we're going to start in a few minutes here, hit the like, hit the subscribe, repost, all that stuff. That stuff helps me out. And to me, that's more important than the financial support, because what it means is that it expands my reach, which means I can talk to more people and get this message out there. So, yeah, my little guy's teething. Things have been, teething Pure. That is rough, man. It passes, Pure. It passes. Just hang in there, Pure. I'm glad you're here, though. Hopefully this will help pass the time a bit. Kibby X on X. Good to see you. How you doing? Vibev. Good to see you again on YouTube. You were here yesterday. Yeah, that's right. You asked a few questions. Good to see you. And there's Lucas on YouTube as well. Oh, and there you go. And now on Twitch, Lucius on the Twitch side. So there you go. So now Lucas will be able to communicate with chat. That'll be good. He had to get his account verified. That's awesome. Yeah, Battle says lots of guys my age around here in Brown County seem to be unteething. It happens with age, Battle. If you think about it, you're speedily headed towards it. That future is coming for you faster than you think. Yeah. All right. So we have a reasonable amount of people on. I think we'll give it one or two more minutes. I'll just kind of describe for people who are new here what I do. Every weekday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I do the daily tech news streams. The reason why I go those streams is I cover cybersecurity articles. I briefly cover scientific articles, statistics, other types of news articles about the programming landscape, hardware landscape, tech landscape. The reason why I do that is because I feel like, well, no, I don't feel like, I know that the tech industry is in shambles right now. Nobody knows how to write quality software anymore. Nobody knows how to write quality websites anymore. Nobody knows how to program with any level of care. I'm exaggerating, not like nobody actually. There are still plenty of people who do, but we need more. We're in desperate need for better quality. That's why ads are everywhere and subscriptions are everywhere, and people turn you into the product and sell your data because we've lost our way. We have lost our ability to write quality stuff. And I don't just want to say it, I want to prove it. And that's why I do the daily tech news streams. I go into article after article, scientific study after scientific study, literally on things like TypeScript and Rust and JavaScript and what things make a good website, etc. I cover that on the daily. For my daily tech news streams as proof that the industry is in bad shape. And let me tell you, after 54, I think episodes is the last one, 54 episodes of the daily tech news streams, I can almost certainly tell you that the number one cybersecurity issue is not secure, not properly configured S3 buckets. That's the thing we see the most. It's absolutely crazy. However, I also have an enlightened programming stream, which is far and few between, but I have a playlist on my YouTube channel, and it goes over the scientific articles in full. Like, we read it, the whole thing, and we try and understand the whole thing to make my case. And then I try and make logical arguments. I debate people online, including idiots who say stupid crap like, if you're a vibe coder, you're a programmer. And then I would say something like, I've had this happen. And I would say, well, then anybody who's ever told a group 1+ coders what features they want coded is also a programmer by that metric, because a vibe coder will tell an LLM what to code and get an output. And then they went, yes. And then I go, you're dumb. These are not logical arguments. We cater too much to people's feelings. We cater too much to people's preferences. Whether something feels good as a developer experience. Developer experience is not a good way to measure how good the quality of your code is. But that's what we seem to have fallen on in the tech industry. It's feelings and preferences and all that. So that's typically what I do on here. I'm also building a video game just to because I want to walk the walk. So it's a browser-based video game based on an old Super Nintendo game. I use Vanilla C without the standard library. I have just Clang to compile it to WebAssembly. I run it on the browser. No WebGL, no WebGPU, no Canvas, no hardware acceleration, essentially. Everything's in HTML. It's just HTML elements, just mostly div elements. Vanilla JavaScript and vanilla CSS. Zero third-party libraries. It's an absolutely insane way to build a game, but it works. And if a high school dropout like me can do it, then most certainly the industry can do a lot better than me. And it's been fun, but it's also because I want to lead by example. So that's typically what I do. But today and yesterday, we're going a little bit off course. We're going to interview Łukasz. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring Łukasz on. I think we have everybody who we're going to have here. What's up, Kai on X? Good to see you. Moldy, I see you, Moldy, on YouTube. Okay, get out of here, Moldy. Shut up, Moldy. Okay, no one likes you, Moldy. Out of all the people who suck in chat, you suck the most. I'm going to go to my full cam, which is different than this one. You guys don't know the difference, but there is a difference. I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to call Łukasz, and I will bring him on, and we'll get this party started, all right? So again, thanks everybody for being here. Let's get going. So I'm going to mute myself. You guys won't be able to hear me. Let me choose someone to be in charge of chat. Pure on Twitch, you're in charge of chat. I know you have a kid that's teething. I know it's a bad time for you to be in charge, but you're in charge of chat. All chat. YouTube chat, X chat. Maybe Kai, I'll make you in charge of X chat. All right, Kai? You're in charge of X chat. All right, I'm going to mute myself. Let's do this. Okay, folks. Yeah. Okay, folks. So we're gonna switch over. I'm gonna introduce you to Lukasz. And Lukasz, I'm going to shut up for a second, and I want you to say something. And let's get. Can I get one of the mods to do a video check and a sound check after Lukasz talks? Hang on. That didn't work. That didn't work. I think I know why. One sec. If I do this and I do, let's say this. Okay, talk again. Nope. Nope. Oh, there we go. That did it. Talk again.
There we go.
Yeah.
Are we back? Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
We're back. Okay.
Excellent. We're so back.
Awesome. Thank you. We're so back. He's back. All right. So good balance. Everything seems good. Thank you, mods. I appreciate it. That's great. Okay, that's on me, professional streamer over here. But in fairness to me, I am a high school dropout with a room temperature IQ. So, what do you expect from me, right? So, Lukasz, welcome in, man. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me and covering kind of perhaps a bit of a spicy topic in some regards, but we'll get into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm essentially just going to let you introduce yourself. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and then maybe just tie it in just a little bit as how you got into Rust, let's say, and we'll just kind of segue in like that, nice and easy.
Oh yeah, sure. So, let's see. Let's start with me. So, you guys should already know my name. My name is Lukasz. I am a programmer, although that is currently not my job title. My job title right now is software engineering methodologist, which means that I tell people what to do in order to do it correctly. So I do write a good amount of code. I teach. I teach at a university, and I do a lot of code reviews and that sort of stuff, educational materials, research, and so on. In our company, which is Brains Systems, we do. We are the shovel salesman for Bitcoin mining. That would be the correct way to put it. We don't develop blockchain. We know nothing about crypto, but we know a lot about hardware and firmware, low latency, high performance networking, and that sort of stuff. So shovel salesman, stuff for operating, monitoring, mining farms, and that sort of stuff. I'm very passionate about doing things correctly and for having actual passion for the things that you do. So, really enjoying the craft of programming and of playing with the computer, the old hacker culture that you're bending your system to your will. I have a very weird setup and I like to do weird things and do things that I think are, for fun, not necessarily for profit, but just to see what can be done. I suppose that's somewhat of an interesting story. The story of how I got into Rust is not interesting at all. So
Yeah.
I like obscure stuff. It's patently obvious from the stuff that I post on my Twitter. I like to try things. I like unorthodox, non-mainstream programming languages and technologies, operating systems, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been language hopping a lot, especially like years ago. And it's like 10 years ago, I installed a Visual Studio extension for Rust because I saw that it became available, and that's how I got into Rust. There isn't any higher ideological goal for my entrance into Rust. It was just like, oh well, here is an opportunity. I'm gonna grab it, and that was 10 years ago. At this point,
Right. So it sounds like what drives you more than anything else is curiosity, which is something we talked about yesterday with Prosium and chat. We wish that more programmers had a curiosity and a passion for the craft, because it can be a craft. It can be a 9 to 5 job. You punch in, punch out, write code, but there is an actual craft to this, and there's a ton of power in it. So it's kind of sounds like that's what's driven you with some of your technical decisions, at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I'm maybe not exactly a craftsman, because that would mean that I would finish all my side projects, I
Of
think.
course, yeah.
But more of a tinkerer, I would say, that I tinker with stuff. That's for the fun of it. I
Right.
suppose that's the best way
Right.
to put it.
Well, to be fair, I don't think anybody in this field has finished all of their side projects. So if nobody has finished all of their side projects, then everyone's a craftsman by that metric, right? So yeah, right. It's an easy one, yeah. Liam writes code, by the way. Thank you for the follow on Twitch. I really do appreciate that. It helps a lot.
Oh,
Okay,
it's my boy Liam. Nice.
what's that?
My boy Liam.
Yeah, there you go. He's a friend of yours. Nice, showing support. Okay, so just because we kind of talked just a little bit before the stream, you have a setup with like your operating system and whatnot. I don't want to give too much away. Why don't you just kind of like nerd out a bit, because a lot of my viewers like hearing about like keyboards and operating systems and Arc, by the way, and all that kind of stuff. So hit us with some of the nerdy stuff, and then we'll kind of try and fit Rust in here.
Well, you mentioned the word keyboard, which is like activating a thread card in
Okay,
Yu-Gi-Oh!
I know what I've done. I fully know.
It makes me show
There you
my
go.
keyboard, which is this.
Yes.
I suppose I should show it like
yeah.
this, perhaps. That makes sense. So I have a very weird keyboard, which is a DIY kinda effort, and I have a very weird key layout that nobody else
Drop all the
has.
subs. Drop all the subs for me, because I did this. Keep going. Keep going.
And I really like ergonomics, because I also write books as part of my job, and
nice, yeah.
I've published one. I have two more, hopefully that will be published later this year, programming books.
Yeah.
And I type a lot of code. I sit at the computer for who knows how many hours a day. So I maybe want to not get a carpal tunnel,
Yeah.
that sort of stuff, or a SI injury. So I want good ergonomics, and I want typing to be a pleasant experience, which on most keyboard it's slightly subpar,
Right.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Other than that, I have a somewhat weird setup in that it looks very desktop, I suppose. I can actually show you guys, because the camera has a very long cable. So I actually have this kind of thing going on,
Yeah.
where I have two monitors and audio devices. I like good audio quite a lot, so I have a subwoofer and a setup, and there is a ton more devices hidden behind it. I don't know if it's very visible, but essentially everything is connected to a ThinkPad.
Nice.
So
An actual ThinkPad. Yeah.
indeed, so it's the everything ThinkPad.
It's everything.
I suppose.
Yeah.
I use Artix, but I get most of my packages through Nix or Geeks.
Yeah.
For some of them, especially the Lisp adjacent ones, are coming from Geeks. And I also have a Void Linux. I call it a subsystem. It's like a CRUD that I use a lot to run stuff in a somewhat clear environment without having to spawn containers for all that stuff. So like a clear setup. And I also have a Dragonfly BSD VM that I'm running constantly, and I have it like bi-directionally mounted via SSHFS, which sounds horrible, but on localhost it's actually quite fast. And SSH is so fast on localhost that I wanted to have a really pretty prompt using Starship on Dragonfly BSD, but it doesn't compile Dragonfly
of
BSD.
course.
So what I'm doing is in my PS1, I'm calling SSH to run the Starship binary on the host on Linux, just feeding it information about the system via command line flags.
Of course.
And it's so fast that you don't even know that it's doing an SSH round trip on every prompt.
It's like the Frankenstein mode, but it works.
And half of my system is also Emacs, so
There you go.
uh,
Yeah. That's
I'm quite passionate, you would say. I
clearly.
made the font that I use for all my applications by taking an old font and adding characters to it and modifying it.
That's that's how you do it. There is no other way. Yeah. That's the only way. Yeah. If you're not making your own fonts, you're not a real programmer. That should be like the bare minimum requirement to every entrance test. Have you made your own font? Show me, or else get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a very special reason why I like that font specifically, and that's and why I wanted to revive it for myself and to make it support Czech language, because also my Linux is in Czech. Is that I have very good eyesight for near distances. So on all of my machines, and I have a 4K monitor, I have the font size set up such that the lines in the characters are 1 pixel wide. And I can just fit a tremendous amount of information on my screen, which is the way that I prefer to work. Just as much information as possible.
That's I honestly that no lies detected for me. I can see why you would do that. That makes a ton of sense to me. So we have a fully fledged nerd before us, and based on the posts that I see you posting on X, it all tracks. Everything lines up with what you're saying. You care about what you're doing, and you find it enjoyable and fun, and it shows. So it seems like you have some background in Rust, both at a technical level and at a more, let's call it community level. Let's just call it the community level. There's some background you've had, and
you could call me a proselytizer.
A proselytizer. Yeah, there you go. All right. So from your perspective, I think you've probably seen some of the pushback that the Rust community has received due to the nature of even things like proselytizing even. But it's a little bit more than that. It's the people behind Rust, generally speaking, not everybody, generally speaking, because I have a few good Rust people here who I wouldn't put under this bucket. But there's something about the Rust people that kind of rubs everybody the wrong way, or most people the wrong way. I don't want to give away too much because I want you to talk about it. So why don't you talk about your kind of background with that kind of stuff in the Rust community?
Well, I've been with Rust for a very long time, so it's been, at this point it's been over 10 years. I started first using Rust in March of 2015. And I can find the date out exactly because I can track it down in Git. So I think it's like March 13, something like that. So a tiny bit before Rust.0 was released, actually. And I have seen the community change quite a lot. I suppose that everything quite changed a lot if you compare like the online social culture in the Western world between 2015 and today. You know, it all started with Harambe with the child falling into the gorilla pen in the Cincinnati Zoo, or what was it?
Yep.
Yep. And I also managed to still catch Rust when it was quite an obscure thing. And we were figuring out a lot of the stuff, how to do it correctly. And there was a lot of memes. And one of the like more unfortunate memes, which was actually intended as a meme, was the rewrite it in Rust meme. So
Yeah.
people found it incredibly funny to bother others that they wouldn't even mean it seriously. Uh, at first, when we would like do it, would jump into some completely nonsensical place, open an issue at the Node.js and say rewrite it in Rust. Yay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then there was quite an explosion where the community just went like this, and we started having a lot of people who didn't understand the inside jokes. They started to mean it seriously. So yeah, actually coming in and yes, rewrite it in Rust because Rust is the best. And those are people that don't really know much about programming, or maybe they do know about programming on the technical side, but they do not know about the economics of programming, and especially the economics of open source programming, because that's still an economical venture, even though you don't exchange money usually. Maybe you get some donations, but there are still choices that must be made in regard to some costs and investments that you are making for an expected return.
Right.
Sometimes some choices just don't make sense,
Right.
even though it would be fun, but
Right.
it doesn't make sense. And you need to be more pragmatic the bigger a project gets. So you can do fun stuff when you have an obscure project that has a 0 stars on GitHub, but once it has 10,000, you need to start thinking about how to not screw it up completely.
Right.
And partly some of the things that contributed to Rust being perceived as the paragon of crazy left-wing activist people is the location, both online and in real life, where Rust was born and where Rust grew up. So I understand you live in the US.
Canada, but close enough. We'll be the 51st
okay.
state soon, so it's okay.
Yeah. So Canada.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I wasn't sure because I first saw that you have a Greek surname.
Yes.
So
born and raised
Canada
in Greece,
is
but live in Canada. Yeah.
familiar with the state of California.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes hard in the big cities when it comes to progressive thinking. And that's where Rust was born. Rust was born by people working in Mozilla, big Californian cities. There was like I forgot, so don't screw it up. I think it's Bay Area Rust meetup. Was like one of the largest, where all the important people were, and all the important people were there because that's where Mozilla is located, and that's where the people working on Rust located because of Mozilla. So that's like kind of the in real life place,
Yeah.
So Rust was kind of located in California, and California is quite progressive, especially in the big cities. And so it was projected by Mozilla, and some of the core people working on Rust, they adopted those kinds of values, sometimes a bit too hard. And they said, okay, so this is the language for people who have this sort of values, which is in no way, I would say, it's in no way representative of the broad community that uses Rust, but it has quite an impact on public perception. And the online location that's, I suppose, problematic is that since the early days up until now, the Rust community was quite strong on Reddit. Reddit is just a cesspool, and
everyone knows. Yeah.
as Reddit degenerated, I feel like there was some contact with those parts of the Rust community. But I would say that most people that write Rust are quite normal. But unfortunately, the normal people, such as myself, well, not myself, I'm quite loud, but most of the normal people are quite quiet and just shut the fuck up.
Mhm.
I suppose. So there is a minority of loud people who associate Rust with politics. I remember there was someone on Reddit saying that it was like so awesome what all Mozilla did, and that we need more politics in programming, more political activism. Sorry, that was the exact term. And I said, no, we don't. We don't need more political activism in programming languages. That's nonsense. You know, you can have. You can reflect your opinions in the software that you write, and that's your prerogative. It's like I cannot stop you. I don't want to stop you. If you want to make software that reflects your opinions, make it, put it out on the free market, and you will see if it survives or if it doesn't survive. It's the litmus test of pretty much everything, not just politics. And I got downvoted to oblivion.
Of course you
It was
did.
really quite
Yeah.
funny but it's because it was Reddit.
Yeah.
And when you go into local communities here in Europe, it's just all normal people. It's like mostly middle-aged Slavic guys who are working either on embedded low level or sometimes on crypto, rarely on some other stuff. And it's just, it's a language that makes sense technically, and maybe there are some crazies over the big pond in America, but we don't really care about that. There is another factor which is not related to Rust specifically, but especially in like the current perception, we tend to characterize, and in the US they actually just refer to it. If you're left wing, you are progressive. If you're right wing, you are conservative. And I'm most definitely right wing, but I wouldn't describe myself as a conservative. I'm a classical liberal. That's what I call myself. I care about liberties first and foremost. I don't like taxes.
Yeah.
But every time you have something new, it will first be adopted by the progressive people because it's by their nature. They are progressive, so they are far more willing to jump at the new next best thing. And as things get older, you will have more and more conservative proportion in the community. And Rust isn't that new. It was first created in 2006 and it was kinda usable since 2010. But the actual real spike in usage was only since like 2017, 2018, which is when two very important things were already merged into Rust, and that was non-lexical lifetimes, which make working with Rust far, far easier. Because the compiler can see that, hey, I can shorten the lifetime of something, so you don't need to explicitly get rid of a temporary variable to satisfy the borrow checker.
Right.
And the second thing is async. So async was merged during that time to stable, and that was a huge, huge drawing point to everyone who does any sort of network or file I/O bound operations, or anything that can be mapped onto it. So there are projects such as Embassy that map hardware interrupts on bare metal into async, and the result is that you have very high level looking code at bare metal with no hidden cost, so to speak.
Okay.
So that's when really there was a boom in the community.
Okay.
So it's still in the very progressive phase because it's growing and it feels new, even though it's not as new as something like Go, which had a much easier go of it because you already had a lot of adoption 10 years ago for Go, and even 15 years ago, I suppose. Because Go and Rust are about the same age as far as I know.
They're pretty
So-
close, yeah. Yeah, it goes a little
And
bit
there actually used to be a rivalry between Rust and Go,
hmm
which somewhat persisted until today, but it no longer makes any sense.
Yeah.
And that's because Rust originally wasn't nowhere near as low level as it is.
Yeah.
It had classes and it had green threads and it had a garbage collector. And its goals were much more aligned with those of Go.
hmm
But over the years, it diverged until in like 2014, we were finally sure about what Rust should be. And it was something that has very different goals from Go.
hmm
So it doesn't make any sense
Yeah, it's
anymore. So
comparing
it's
apples
kind
and
of a relic.
oranges. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's a good background. So let me hone in on maybe one or two questions here. So you talked about the, let's call it the, maybe the political, but it's not necessarily political. But political is it kind of in that bucket. It's more societal. Let's hone in on the people who have like a societal leaning, and it could be in either direction, because I think you and I would generally agree that it doesn't matter whether you are progressive or conservative or anything else. The code doesn't care. What matters is that you write good code, and it's, you know, quality and performant and stable and secure and all that. That, and ultimately, like, doesn't really matter anything else above that. However, I have seen, and you can either correct me or agree with me or something in between. I have seen, just generally speaking, but in particular with Rust, a capturing of the programming industry where people who have societal leanings move the needle with regards to how you code. And one of the examples that you and I, well, actually, I don't know, you and I talked about it, but I have seen you post about it, was like the renaming of master and main on Git. For that's one example. Or I've brought it up on my streams, the community development guidelines by, I believe, Unreal, where you can't use particular words inside of your code because they are, let's say, like racist words or whatever, which is absolutely mind boggling. I don't care which side of the quote unquote aisle you're on. It's absolutely crazy to me that you would do that. But that's what I see. I see these societal things injected exactly into how you code. And I'm wondering if A, you've seen something similar, and B, whether you think the Rust language has been kind of pushed by these external factors into particular directions. And I want to bring up one other thing that kind of exactly related to this. You brought it up yourself, where there was the meme of rewrite it in Rust, and then that was kind of captured. And I see that as more of like a portion of that user base has that societal leaning towards, let's throw out the old guard because gatekeeping, conservatism, the power structures and hierarchies, that's the way they view the world. And so they jumped on something that they could utilize to further that kind of ideology. So again, just to summarize, do you see that impacting programming and Rust and their directions?
I don't think that it's like universal. You will definitely find some cases, some people were not particularly fond of the Rust code of conduct, which is committed into the Rustlang repository because it mentions all sorts of naughty words, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and pronouns and all that sort of stuff. On the other hand, when people are generally requesting others to rewrite something in Rust, they don't want to do it for them. They want them to do it. So they are essentially telling the old guard, learn Rust and rewrite this thing in Rust.
That's
So
worse.
it's not trying to throw them out. Yeah. So it's a request. You come in and you
Yeah.
say, "Hey, rewrite this in Rust."
Yeah.
You
It's
will
the
like that.
retraining camps. Yeah, you have to go and get
Yeah.
retrained. You have to be politically correct now. Yeah.
Which is kind of like counterproductive because if you teach those people Rust, you will not magically make them wear femboy stockings, even though you would perhaps like to. Uh,
Sure.
so
Yeah.
I don't think there is that push necessarily, but you have some people that are rewriting stuff in Rust because uh, either they just really want to do it. These are people who are fans of the language more so than its practical application. So, and most of those attempts just fail. It's a dice roll, you know.
Right.
You go and you have this ambition, like I don't know, I will rewrite GIMP into Rust, and typically when people are doing this, they are hoping that it will be safer, it will be faster, it will be more cross-platform. And these are generally large undertaking done by programmers who may already be technically skilled, but they do not have the sense of scope to realize just how much work it is. And then you have people rewriting stuff in Rust for technical reasons. And those reasons may be technical by proxy. So for instance, you may be rewriting something in Rust because a C code base has scaled up too much and it's difficult to keep it together between many people working on the same projects and making changes simultaneously. And you have to watch for a lot of stuff. It's how you create a lot of the issues that are mentioned in the CVE index, you know, the safety issues.
That dreaded CVE index, yeah.
Yeah. Safety doesn't necessarily mean just memory safety. There are other invariants that you can enforce using Rust. It can be concurrency safety, or you can have things like session types or ordinal types where you enforce the order of some operations, perhaps in a protocol or some sort of stuff. Or when I'm already mentioning protocols, you can enforce that all possible messages that may be, or types of messages that may be transferred over the wire are handled. That sort of stuff. And it's very difficult to keep track of because you kind of need to have the whole scope of the project in your mind.
Right.
And you cannot do it for very large projects because you can have one person doing a change that's correct. And if you just code review it in a vacuum, you say, okay, this is good, this is perfect. And then somewhere else, you have another person doing a change and you see, okay, this is good, this is correct. But those changes change something between themselves and they don't mesh together anymore. And now you have created an edge case where something is unhandled or where you cause a different sort of issue. And it's very, very difficult to keep track of that. Sometimes projects grow beyond the scope that even the graybeards can just keep the whole project in mind. And in those situations, you have a lot of distrust. You don't trust the contributors. You especially don't trust more junior contributors or coworkers. This is perhaps even more present in commercial setting where you have tight deadlines and you have people who you did not hire and you cannot tell them to fuck off because your code is bad very easily. And you need to keep everything together and you just cannot hold it in your memory anymore. And that's where issues might start popping up. And you want to have as little mental load as you possibly can have. And that's the reason why you might rewrite something in Rust. Another reason why you might rewrite something in Rust is because and this is kind of a C thing again. I will mention a non-C thing after that, so we keep it more balanced. Is that cross-platform code is quite difficult in C because you don't have the abstractions that hide the platform details. So if you are very tightly integrating with some system primitives, you need to worry about all sorts of defines, different includes on different platforms and that sort of stuff. And that ends up cluttering up the code, which can obscure what it actually does. And, you know, you have two options. You can either invest more time and you write the abstractions yourself, And people have been doing that time and time again, and sometimes not correctly, of course. Or you can use Rust, which will have these abstractions either already covered by the standard library, which in Rust is still quite small. Just like in C, Rust is a very small standard library. Or you rely on a crate where this has been solved already.
Right.
And so you really want to, especially if you're maintaining an open source project, you want to have the project as small as possible because it's less maintenance cost. So if you can outsource writing boilerplate over OS primitives to some crate that's trusted by the community, why wouldn't you take it, right? Especially if it's a blessed crate, which means the authors of the language develop this crate or they put their seal of approval on top of it. So you know it's good, so to speak. So that's a completely pragmatic way that you might want to do that. And as far as you would rewrite something that's not in C, perhaps a more high-level language, I don't know, Java, C#, is that Rust makes it much easier to write robust code. If you need something to be a long-running service, you cannot have unhandled exceptions leaking and the possibility that you get the dreaded null pointer exception. And that's why also very few daemons are written in C in commercial settings. All the services that are long running are written in high level languages, and you want a language that makes writing this easy. The way Rust makes this easy is because it encodes both of those things into the type system. So if something fails, if it can fail, it will return a result, and you need to get the inner value out of that result. So you are forced to do error handling on the first go. You cannot ever forget error handling. Even though you may say, okay, either give me the correct value, or if there is an error, just shut down the program. That's still something that you do explicitly, that you can check for, and that you can have tools in your CI that ban that just say, no, you will not be using this. And no junior programmer will be able to take the lazy route, so to speak. And the same principle with nullability or values that may be missing. It's encoded into the option type, which, by the way, optimizes away to a nullable pointer. So it ends up being the exact same as a pointer that may be null in C. When it's compiled into machine code, which is really cool. It has a niche optimization for option of bool also, where it uses the other bits to encode the state of the enum. So you may want to do that. And there are also not necessarily performance for speed, but performance for reliability. If you have a garbage collector, it's harder to predict how long things will take, because the garbage collector may interrupt whatever is happening. If you've ever played Minecraft, there is the lag spike of death that was quite common in the earlier years, where the game would run correctly and then it would freeze up, and then it would run at a nice frame rate and it would freeze up again. And this was happening because you didn't have enough RAM, and the garbage collector was freezing the process to free up memory, and then it would work for a while until the memory was once again occupied, and it would freeze and clean up the memory, and so on, and so on, and so on. And if you want time predictability, you typically do not want a garbage collector.
Right.
And you do not also want a garbage collector if you want to be integrating with other languages. So if you are maybe writing the core of a Python library, Rust is a valid option alongside C, C++. So all those situations where you need to write something that integrates well with other things, you don't want it to have its own runtime.
Right.
Which is why no one makes the cores of Python libraries in Go, because Go has a runtime. It is a
Right.
garbage collector.
Right.
It tracks pointers that are running across the program, so that it can resize the stack, so that it can upgrade stack pointers into heap allocated objects and that sort of stuff.
Right.
So that's like a couple legitimate reasons that you may want to rewrite something in Rust, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Some of this that goes directly into the technical stuff. So I think we can sort of jump into there. I just want to close off. If I was to summarize what you've kind of said here, that there are some people who like to use Rust for their ideological whatever it might be. It could be anything, honestly. But from your perspective, when you just sit down with other people in real life and you work on Rust, you don't mostly don't care about that. You don't see that. You just like, hey, here's some technical things that we achieve with Rust. You just outlined a few, and it works. It's we get better quality output doing this, and let's just do that, right? And that's good. I like that. Would you say, generally speaking, like how truthful would the statement be that the people who are driving Rust at the very top have an ideological movement behind them as one of the main things that they kind of instill inside of Rust to this day?
I'm not sure if they are necessarily trying to instill it in it as a technology. They are trying to instill it as a community, maybe. But yes, of course, famously the older core team members, some of them were very, very ideological. I think too much. There was an incident a couple of years ago. I think it was during Christmas where the entire moderation team quit on the
Yeah.
spot. And it quit on the spot because some people from the core team were saying that we should kill all men.
Right.
And these people said, okay, so no, we are not cleaning up this mess anymore. We did it many times, but you are abusing your position, your leadership position, to spout political stuff on social media, and there is always a backlash, and we don't want to be cleaning that up anymore,
Right.
essentially. So these people are, of course, there. I wouldn't say that they are the people who wrote the vast majority of stuff. So there is an important distinction to be made. So, Mozilla is Californian, and Rust Foundation is also Californian because it inherited the people that were working on Rust in Mozilla. And some of them are left wing, but they are actually reasonable people. And
What? Such people exist?
people exist. Mention
Wow.
that there's a lot of reasonable left-wing people, and unfortunately, I think that they are kind of overshouted by the less reasonable people.
Yeah.
And from the outside perspective, I was thinking about it. How screwed up it is that in the US, you're a politician, you have this nice suit, very expensive stuff, you have to carry yourself with some sort of importance, and on the left wing you have to cater to cryptids, and on the right wing you have to cater to blabbering rednecks, which is like incredibly funny to me. Because it's the loud minority of the most insane people that's the most prominent, especially in media, because the moderate people that are quite reasonable, they typically shut up, or they're just not as loud because they're not as controversial. And when it comes down to it, there is perhaps a lot of people from California who are left wing who are contributing to Rust, and we may not agree on some stuff politically, but they are reasonable. They do not look at me and see oh, this guy calls himself a libertarian slash classical liberal. He must be a Nazi, which is a which
Yeah.
is a very funny proposition. Is calling a libertarian a Nazi, because it's like, do whatever you want or else,
All right.
you know.
Yeah, or else.
Or
Yeah,
else
that's the
you're
or
gonna
else
get it. So
part. Yeah.
if you don't do what you want, you're going to get it,
Yeah.
coming after you.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a very strange proposition. And on the right side of things, we have in Europe, we also have insane people. We have insane people who support Russia, who ascribe themselves to the right wing. So let's just say that elections are very difficult every time they happen.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to find a reasonable party that doesn't have an issue one way or another for supporting something that's completely insane. And I can say that most people are reasonable, even though they have different perspectives, and I think that's the difference between extremists and non-extremists, is that non-extremist people use different methods to arrive at essentially the same values. So I can have a friend who is quite left-wing, and he or she says that I want to do thing A, and okay, we talk about why you want to do thing A, and it's to arrive to a particular goal, and I say, okay, we have an agreement. I also want to arrive at that goal, but I think we should go about it differently. It's for example, the goal of having a freedom of choice in your career. I can say, well, maybe it's an issue of money and costs and taxes that people cannot afford to do what they want. And the left-winger might say, well, it's an issue of welfare and support and grants and programs. And probably if you look at it, it's for each issue, there is probably some piece of important information in both, but we just have to figure out which it is. So we still need the other side to listen to it, even though we may be quite certain that we are correct about some presupposition. And the extremists, they don't want to arrive at the same values as the non-extremists do. That's where you have a value, not an opinion or a political policy, but you have a value that's irreconcilable with mine. And there is a lot of people. I have friends who are, somewhat stereotypical left-wing transgender people, and I'm like, okay, fine. We agree on some stuff, we disagree on some other stuff, but you do not treat me like a subhuman because I have different opinions from yours, and I do not treat you like a subhuman because you have different opinions from mine. And we want those people to be the ones that are running things. This is an issue that's not necessarily pertinent to just Rust, but it's been happening in a lot of open source projects, that you have activists who are possessed by an ideology. They do not really represent any opinions of their own. They are just like a speaker for the ideology, like a megaphone that just takes the input and projects it outward. And these people are the radical activists that sometimes try to co-opt projects. They tried to kick Linus Torvalds of Linux a couple of years ago. Some shenanigans are happening with Nix OS. They drafted a letter of resignation for Elke Dolstra. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
I don't know
Sorry.
either. I'll take your pronunciation.
He's
Yeah.
Dutch, who understands that language.
Yeah.
And you had people trying to get rid of Richard Stallman from the FSF Foundation, and those are the people that are bad. But we otherwise, I think that having like a plurality of opinions is kind of something that's unavoidable between the larger community of anything, especially programming, because there are fields where it's far clearer to decide what is the correct way to do things and what is the incorrect way to do things. And programming is a field where we can sometimes say that something is definitely incorrect, but we cannot say what is the most correct option. And all the different operating systems that we have had historically, let's forget about Windows being a commercial product, and all the programming languages and editors and all sorts of other tools, they are reflections of personal philosophies of the people who created them. Like there is the major split is, how do we think about programming? Do we think about it in terms of lambda calculus, or do we think about it in terms of the Turing machine? Lisp was created because John McCarthy really hated the idea of a Turing machine, thought it was unwieldy, that it was awkward. Now we also have interaction nets as a way to model computing that's inherently parallel. That's not a good word to pronounce. So that's that. The Wim versus Emacs wars of yesteryear. They were
The holy
also
wars.
a philosophical split. What all things should an editor do? What editing model should it have? And how big the editor should be. So it's impossible, different paradigms, like how do we model things? Do we think about programs as interactions between discrete objects, or do we think about programs as transitions from types to other types, which is what functional programming is? And there is no correct answer that would be applicable always, even though there are people who are very passionate about Haskell, or maybe people who are very passionate about, I don't know what's a good example, JavaScript, or people who are very passionate about Rust. There is no silver bullet. It's for anything. And so it naturally breeds discourse, because we can never reach the ideal, but we can get closer to it through different ways. And which way is the better way? That's the most difficult question. And if people have strong personal philosophies, they will also have political opinions inherently.
Right.
Because if you have to think about things deeply, the things that you work with, you will probably also be thinking about the way that you view life and how your country is run and what's important in life. So it's unavoidable.
Right.
One thing I would say with regards to activists, and it doesn't matter if they are like very left-wing or very right-wing activists, I'm sure we will find both. One of my friends who incidentally is a left-wing transgender from California, Ultra Magic on Twitter. She's brilliant. So it's extremely smart person. Has argued that the functional programming and static typing values with the guarantees and checks and invariants naturally lean more to a left-wing view of the world. So I suppose that maybe the activists that we'll find will be very left-wing as opposed to very right-wing. But the perpetual activist doesn't stay forever. They just move to the next best thing. And we've seen it in the history of popular politics the last couple of years. There's always been something that's the most prescient issue where all the activists move towards. It's like recently we had another loop of Israel versus Palestine. Before that we had Ukraine versus Russia. We have Trump versus whoever is running against him. We have abortions versus no abortions, and these activists, they move to the next thing and don't talk about the previous thing really anymore, because it's just going with the wave. It's the perpetual activist.
Right.
Perpetual activist doesn't want problems solved. They just want problems to be activists about. And the louder the problem, the more you're attracted to it, because the louder you can be and the better you can feel about yourself.
Yeah.
Just what those people do. They don't solve their own problems. They try to solve the world's problems instead.
Right.
By yapping about it on Twitter.
Right. Okay.
So that's that, I suppose.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's kind of what that is exactly what I wanted to kind of close that loop on, is how that kind of thinking does or doesn't have an impact. So I think it's fair to say then that we have an advantage in the programming space, generally speaking. The advantage is that programming can be independent of even the most ardent activists in any leaning of any kind at all, who want to use any kind of programming paradigm to push anything. The program is the program, and it's going to have inputs and outputs, and that's kind of a thing. And so we can use that to our advantage and go, well, how well does this thing that has code in it do the thing that we want it to do? And you can kind of buy time, for example, like what you're saying, you just buy out enough time and these people will come and go, and it's kind of an inevitable aspect of life. And as long as you focus on the things that matter, which is, in our case, it would be the code, then generally speaking, you can have good outcomes and you can work with people who are reasonable and you can enjoy, coding with and all that. And I think generally speaking, that's true. And I'm glad I'm not alone in thinking that way. I do think it's kind of not just an advantage. It's almost a superpower that we have, that we can circumvent all the, whatever is going on outside, we can circumvent it by going, well, I just want to get the right program out here. Let me just do this correctly, please, as best as I can. I just want to focus on this, and I don't need to worry about whether I, voted for someone or didn't, or whatever the case might be, right? And I think that's great. Yeah. I think that's good. If you have more to say, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would add one last thing,
Sure.
And that it doesn't really matter what are the opinions of the person who created a piece of software.
Mm-hmm.
So long as the technical aspects match with what you need. And I have no issue using software written by the worst activists, because it suits my purpose. If I was very cynical, I would say that I am exploiting my ideological enemies. But I'm not that cynical, and using software written by people who you don't agree with is only a problem if you are captive by that piece of software. If there is no alternative, and if you must depend on it. So if you cannot fork it, for example, so I suppose commercial software would be particularly bad.
Yeah.
Because you are not able to fork it and just keep on keeping on, and if a choice is forced upon you, you are screwed unless if you cannot find an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the case for most open source software, and a piece of software can be written by a communist or a Nazi for all that I care, but if it suits my purpose, it's like, if there is an alternative that I can always switch to, it's not like I'm giving money to someone that I disagree with by using their software. And the software is more important than the ideology of the person writing it. I suppose so.
Yeah.
That's like the major thing that I would like to add. It's like, okay, this piece of software was written by someone you disagree with. Is it really a problem in this case? Because maybe it sometimes is, but I would argue that in most cases it really isn't. You know, just you can use it. It does what you want, and okay, the person is a retard on Twitter. You know, so, okay, that's a prerogative. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's good. So let me just take a pause here, and I'm going to ask a question from Vibav on YouTube, who this can kind of close off the more societal portion of the Rust community, where he asks, on a related note, where can one find Rust communities that avoid such silliness and focus on code and learning? I'm not aware of any, because I'm just getting I'm coming in with ignorance with Rust. So maybe Lukasz, if you know of any communities that would focus on the good parts of Rust, for example.
So, if you want probably the largest online community where people are far more focused on the technology than any politics, are the Rust forums. Surprisingly, the official Rust forums are very technical. And then you should find a local community. I don't know. I cannot tell from that name what's your nationality. I'm sorry, bro. You can probably find a local community, or maybe a community in a nearby large city or something like that. It depends on where you live, I suppose. And unless you live in like San Francisco, you can be sure that all of the people will be normal there. It's really mostly an online issue and a California issue,
Right.
so to speak. And actually, I'm sure for all of the issues that some of the very loud people in Rust, very activist people, have, even on Reddit, they are not unhelpful. So if you come there and you ask a question saying that you need help with something, they will help you. It's one of the things that helped the adoption of Rust quite a lot, is that the community has been willing to help others, very much so. You just cannot mention any politics, so you might get into issues on Reddit. But so long as you ask a technical question, even the Redditors will actually help you in a fairly productive manner.
Yeah.
But yeah, find a local community. I suppose that's the best thing. There will be no wokeness or no any other form of political extremism, and even the Redditors will help you. That's their one redeeming quality, is that when you ask a question, they will actually give you the information that you need. And I suppose that's also part of the reason why the Reddit community is fairly strong, for the degree to which Reddit is absolutely dead.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's that.
Okay. So there you go, Vibav. Hopefully that helps you out on the YouTube side. Yeah, that's good. All right, so let's put that aside, and let's talk about some of the merits of Rust from a technical perspective. Some of the common things that I at least see people talk about, and I might even say myself, there are things that are a bit more subjective about Rust, like how readable it looks. It kind of looks like a weird incantation of satanic magic when you look at it, like but that's more of like a readability. You know, you have the commas and stuff like that, and it's syntax stuff, right? So you can always find somebody who's like, I don't mind reading that, and somebody who's like, I really hate reading that. It's kind of, you can't really put that on a technical merit, right? From a technical merit, though, one of the things, well, actually two of the things that I think come up a lot are the simplicity of some other languages, some alternative languages like C, and how simple it can be to use C by comparison to Rust, with certain technical things that you're doing in some cases, not in all cases. C++, I don't see that argument being made as often because I don't think a lot of people think C++ is as simple as C. So I don't see that as often, but C, I do see it. And then another thing that I hear as common pushback is like compile times, dependencies, kind of some of the I'll put it in quotes because I'm not an expert in this, right? So I'm just saying it out of ignorance. The bloat that comes with getting your safety out of Rust, right? So those, to me at least, those are two common things that I see argued against Rust. So what's your take on those?
Okay, we can start by discussing the simplicity.
Sure.
So there is a initial learning curve to Rust that's undeniable. It's not really a language that you can just jump in without reading anything and start balling. So not really. However, we have to consider that Rust is a low-level language in that it is close to the hardware. So it has manual memory management. It works with real threads and real concurrency directly without any intermediary. And those are things that you do in C and C++ also, of course. You do them in Zig and, I don't know, Pascal many years ago, Ada still, that sort of stuff. And there is a great quote by Paul Snively. I hope I'm not fucking up his name.
I don't know how to pronounce it either. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. He's just this guy on Twitter. And a lot of people, until he changed his profile pic, a lot of people didn't realize just how old he was. He's an actual graybeard. He's seen the Magna Carta, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
He was there when Lisp was first big. And he said that Rust doesn't make memory management or concurrency difficult, but it reveals that it is inherently difficult. Because it's actually a really difficult problem to do memory management correctly, especially at scale. And you get into situations in C, it's like, point to me if there is any point at the one student, if he exists or she exists, that didn't cause a seg fault while learning C. So manual memory management is inherently difficult. And C and C++, they will compile programs that do not do it correctly.
Right.
And okay, if you write a program incorrectly, you run it and it seg faults, that's fine, but that's not really interesting. What's interesting is if you do it incorrectly in such a way that it only happens in an edge case, or that it only causes a seg fault in some specific semi-random conditions, depends on what memory you're writing to, and it might seem to work all right, it might corrupt data, it might cause a buffer overflow and open a pathway to a lot of fun exploits depending on what sort of program it is. So memory management and also writing concurrent code correctly is not easy. And what Rust does is it forces you to do it correctly before the program will compile. Typically, in comparison to many other languages, you will spend more time trying to get the program to compile than testing it at runtime to see that it works correctly.
Right.
So a lot of things, once the program compiles, unless you made a logic error in your algorithm, it will work as you expect it to work. So that's the major draw. And all the languages that I mentioned, they have features for safety. You know, you have the shared pointer and unique pointer in C++ that let you do the resource acquisition initialization pattern and so on. But they are opt-in. You don't have to use them. In Rust, these things are universal. And if you don't want them, you can opt out. Okay, it made seems okay. So both have both, but one is opt-in, the other is opt-out. It's not that important. But it's actually extremely important because A, most people use the defaults, and B, if someone opts out, you can find it very easily. You can find it with grep, for instance. It's very stupid caveman technology. You can find with grep when someone opts out of these features.
Yeah.
But you cannot easily find it if someone forgets to opt in for something.
I see. Right.
Because you cannot find with grep that, hey, there is something that's missing in a declaration somewhere, because you don't know how the declaration looks as a whole. You'd have to write a specialized tool. And this reflects in the efficiency of the language. So if you want to write C, like Rust is by default, you would be putting const almost everywhere, unless you explicitly need something to be actually mutable. And you would be adorning every pointer with no alias with the attribute.
Right.
And I have not seen a C project that would do this. It's very difficult because, a C compiler will not tell you that, hey, you use this variable only in read-only mode, but you didn't put const there.
Right.
It will tell you the others. It will tell you the other side. If you are mutating something that you shouldn't be mutating, but it will still compile it unless you say that warnings should be errors, which you should do always, by the way.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, because I still like writing C. I'm not a C hater,
Right,
not
right.
at all. I just don't like it for large-scale projects. Because those are extremely difficult to do. And I have also seen in commercial settings, you have, especially historically, you have had a lot of people using C, and the first thing they would do is they would build an object system by hand, and then they would be doing object-oriented programming in C. And,
Of course.
all the large corporates, they have their own object system, and then we said, hey, we'll just make a library for it. With the GNU project, be the G-object library. And then we said, okay, we will build a language on top of it, and it will be called Vala, and it will save GNOME. No one uses Vala. Because it's too much like Java at the time. So that's something that's incredibly difficult to do. And the fact that Rust does it by default everywhere reduces the mental load on the programmer. It also reduces visual clutter, because those are words that you would have to be typing over and over again. Makes the lines longer and makes the actual semantics pop out less. And the technical merit is that it makes code easier to optimize by the compiler, because the more you restrict something, the more information you are giving to the compiler about how it can optimize a given piece of code. So it may figure out that, hey, I know this pointer is only red here, so I can optimize some things away, or maybe I can inline something, or maybe I can evaluate something at constant time. Or maybe I know, hey, this pointer is only red, and it is red twice, but I know that the data cannot change, so I will just reduce it to one read and put the value on the stack, and I will not have to traverse that pointer more than once, because I know it cannot change. Or similarly, you can figure out that, hey, I know that these 2 pointers will not be pointing to the same location. So I can be more aggressive with the way that I optimize conditions away that are involving them. Because I know that even though I'm writing to that pointer, it will not change the data pointed to by the first pointer. And that's, let's say, that's quite powerful because you don't have to worry about it. You get that for free.
Right.
And it's also a way to prevent some accidental errors, because you may mutate a variable that you really do not want to mutate. And in many languages, I'm not saying it's exactly a problem of C, because C is too stupid for this type of an issue. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that the language is inexpressive, so it's actually quite explicit in what it does. What I mean is that, hey, you are calling a function and you don't know that under some circumstances that function will change the value of the argument.
Right.
And in Rust, you look at the function signature and you know it will never happen.
Right.
You look at the function signature and you will know whether parameters might be changed. You will know whether it may fail, whether it may fail to provide a value, just straight from the signature. And you are forced to do things correctly on the first go.
Right.
Which is quite useful because it reduces the mental load.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes maintenance easier, because if you would, for example, if you change that function, it would stop compiling because the call sites would be expecting something different.
Right.
Always. And this is not exactly necessarily a problem of C, but it's a problem of dynamically typed languages.
Yeah.
Which will figure that sort of stuff out at the runtime, which is something that you probably don't want if you have a long-running service or something like that. And it's a code path that's not visited very often.
Right.
So that's something that you really do not want.
Right.
Now, to the question of bloat, there is like this meme. So there is a person on Twitter, and I hope he's still watching the stream, Kai Fal, with whom I have a love relationship. And we actually met over a meme that said that the hello world in C was like, I don't know, 13 kilobytes, and in Rust it was 3.5 megabytes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny. It's also true, but it's not like representative of the real world, because what you're actually comparing is the way that C compiles programs by default and the way that Rust compiles programs by default. And Rust compiles programs by default with, well, first off, statically linked, and second off, with all debugging information included.
Right.
So, of course, the binary is big, when you do that, because it contains the debugging symbols for the whole standard library. Of course, that's big.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of text. It's not a lot of code, and it will run not fast, but reasonably quickly, faster than Python, definitely. But it's just a lot of debugging information. If you run strip on it, it will shrink to nothing in comparison.
Yeah.
And that's kind of this type of difference isn't really a question of bloat. It's just, you're by default we are compiling programs unoptimized and with full debugging information. Then we are compiling them as much statically as we can for a given target.
Right.
And if you compile something in release mode without full debugging information, the binaries will be much smaller.
Right.
Of course. So that really isn't that much of a problem. Now the binaries will still be bigger than C binaries. And the reason why they are bigger is because the standard library of Rust is in like a special mid state. So typically when libraries in Rust are distributed, they are distributed by source. And you are compiling from the bottom up on your machine, which also kind of contributes to the long build times that you were mentioning.
Right.
But this part only contributes to the first build. It doesn't contribute to the builds after that. And the standard library is kind of distributed half compiled into like an intermediary format. And this half compiled artifact isn't really pruned completely when you are linking to it. So it will add maybe like 200 kilobytes to your program. 300, depends on the situation, I suppose, and what platform it is, what executable format. And on a nightly, you have a feature called build STD. And if you use build STD, it will just build the standard library from source, just like every other dependency,
Right.
with the profile settings that you have selected for your build and everything. And that produces a much smaller binary. So I've been able to get a Hello World that was essentially the same size as the C1. Depending on the compiler, sometimes the C1 was bigger, sometimes it was smaller, and there was no like within a couple of kilobytes, because when you use build STD, it can actually do very aggressive dead code elimination and link time optimization to just delete everything that's unused.
Right.
And then you get very small binaries. And so if you actually do need small binaries, a solution exists. It is just not default, and this is a question of defaults. It's not a question of unavoidable bloat. It's what is the default. And Rust doesn't prioritize file size as by default.
Right.
It prioritizes either debuggability for the debug mode, or it prioritizes performance in release mode.
Right.
And sometimes faster binaries are bigger.
Right.
Because you are doing things like unrolling loops and that sort of stuff.
Right.
So sometimes you have faster binaries that are bigger than smaller binaries, than slower binaries. Because you do optimizations that increase the amount of machine code, but it's machine code that executes faster because it tastes better for the CPU, so to speak.
Right.
So that's that sort of issue, I suppose. Now, the dependencies are a whole another matter entirely.
Yeah.
So it's something that's very different from C or C++ or even Zig still. We kinda have the Python/Node.js model of dependencies, where we pull in dependencies for a lot of stuff. The reason why we have a lot of dependencies, which still isn't that much, you may have the biggest project that I have ever seen had like 600 dependencies. You can have, for some JavaScript frameworks, you can have Hello World projects that have like 1,000.
Of course. Yeah.
Absolutely,
I've covered
absolutely
some on
no
here.
problem.
Yeah.
Exactly. For Rust, usually most of my projects fit between 100 and 200 dependencies. And a number of the dependencies are quite small typically. And a lot of them exists like deliberately because the standard library is very small.
Mm.
The standard library is very small. It doesn't have some stuff that you would expect. So it doesn't have date time management, for example.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have random number generation. Rust has async programming, but it doesn't come with an async runtime in the standard
I see.
library.
Right.
And unlike Go, which has its own async runtime that's inherent to Go, the reason Rust doesn't have those things in the standard library is because once you put something in the standard library, it's extremely difficult to both change it and update it. So the standard library for every programming language, the standard library is special because it's the only dependency whose version is kind of bolted to the language.
Mm-hmm.
It's so you
Yeah.
update the standard library by updating the language.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to update the dependencies independently of updating the language.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, a new dependency requires new features of the language, but Rust will not do that to you. So Rust has a notion of a minimum supported version, so it will not automatically give you a Semver compatible version that would be incompatible with your version of the compiler. Resolver is quite smart.
Right.
And so you don't want to have a big standard library because that's where code goes to die. And there is also no like dynamic error type in the standard library because there is a lot of ways to go about it. And we have had a lot of libraries that kinda had one idea about it, and it was phased out by another library that was a bit smarter about it. And you would not be able to do that in the standard library because it would be a breaking change. And we would have to have like Rust 2.0 every couple months. And that would just be terrible. So Rust has deliberately a very small standard library that contains very, very generic data structures and very, very generic interfaces to the operating system and very, very generic math primitives and that sort of stuff. And anything beyond that goes into crates.
Right.
So you will be importing those crates, but those crates are often blessed. So they are developed by the people who are also developing the language or by other people who have a lot of clout, so to speak.
Right.
And they are considered like the best thing available currently. And if you need that, you will include that. If you do not need it, you will not be paying for it in any way, not even a build time to process the dependency.
Right.
Which is one of the features that's intended to make it easier to write long-lived projects in Rust. It's expected that, maybe we will be changing some stuff over the years, but you will have here a project that maybe will exist for 20 years and things will change, but the language will still be fundamentally compatible. The libraries will still be available because crates cannot be deleted.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very important difference from NPM, for example. If you know about the left pad fiasco.
Left pad. Oh yeah, we know about it here. Yeah.
So you cannot delete Rust crates. You can yank Rust crates, and what yanking a crate does is it prevents new projects from depending it, and the resolver from selecting those versions as a dependency if you have a loose version requirement,
Right.
which we'll probably have. Because you do not want to bolt down exact versions, you want Semver compatible versions.
Right.
And so these things can move independently in a compatible manner, such that it's far harder, it's pretty much impossible to introduce a breaking change to the language that would just completely break your project.
Mm-hmm.
If you have old Rust projects that do not compile, it's typically because they didn't specify the dependency versions correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you just say that you don't really care about the version, or you say I just want version 0, and that's playing with fire when it comes to Semver, because you are allowed to have breaking changes between minor versions if it's less than 1.0.
Right.
So then the libraries will break, and you're stupid because you didn't commit a log file to instruct people which versions exactly you were developing on.
Right.
But otherwise, it will survive. And Rust actually has a very interesting mechanism from the robustness perspective that lets it introduce breaking changes without splitting the ecosystem. It's called additions. Originally, it was called epochs before we released the first edition /epoch.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, in your create manifest, there is a field that says edition, and it's a year. So you have edition 2015, 2018, 2021, 2024, right, which was released this year because they didn't make it in time.
Right.
One of my Czech friends was working on that, and they just had too much work. All of those guys, and essentially, this lets you make breaking changes that disappear like somewhere in the middle of the code being processed by the compiler. So, for example, you can introduce new keywords, you can introduce new methods or things that would override other methods. For example, there was a thing where I think it was introduced in 2018, is that if you called into iterator on an array to get an iterator over the array, this method didn't exist, but there existed a method for a slice, which is like the pointer to an array or to another collection. And the one thing that Rust does automatically is this kind of like automatically referencing stuff when you are calling it as a method, because it would be like extremely painful, and C does that also C++ does that also, by the way. It would be extremely awkward if you had to, write that ampersand and the whole thing in parentheses and then dot method,
Right.
It would be fucking horrible. So all the languages do it.
Right.
And so what it would see would be, hey, okay, I can take the implementation from the slice, and the type of the item in the iterator will be a pointer to every element one by one. But it's very helpful to have into iterator on an array directly, such that the type of the element is the element, not a pointer to it. So that was introduced, and it was introduced as a thing between editions, if I recall correctly. I think it was 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's a breaking change. It's a very small breaking change, and many programs will work just fine. But it's a breaking change nonetheless. And the cool thing about editions is that you can depend on crates that are written with different editions. And that goes both forward and backward. So I can have a very old piece of code written with Rust 2015, and I can depend on a library that's written in Rust 2024. At the boundary, it's all the same. So you do not fracture the ecosystem, the Python 2 versus Python 3, or Scala 2 versus Scala 3, or Perl 5 versus Perl 6. Sort of stuff. You do not fracture the ecosystem, because the crates don't even know what what edition the other crate is written with, because the internal representation is still the same for the compiler. It's things that are resolved during the process, and the way they talk each other, there are no breaking changes between that. So it's very easy typically to migrate, and if you don't want to migrate, you don't have to, and you are not locked away from new versions of your dependencies. So it's a way to be quite maintainable long term, which is one of the reasons why you would use C++. C++, adds a lot of stuff, but it's fundamentally backwards compatible. It's been backwards compatible for however many years. So I think like we're pushing 40 or something like that with C++.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been fundamentally backwards compatible, and it has the benefit that you can have very old code bases that you will probably get working within a reasonable amount of effort. The not so nice thing is that you are forced to live with some of the choices that you have made previously, while you were not as wise as you are today.
Of course.
And people like to shit on C++ for a lot of weird choices, but those choices weren't that weird back then. But they just cannot change. You just have to stay that way. They can add a new alternative that does
Right.
things correctly, but people will still not use it. And it's weird because it's weird for us now because we are wiser. We have seen a lot of ideas being explored, and we figure out that some things are good, some things are unwieldy. The whole how do you make a hello world in C++? Well, there is this character output, and then you use the left shift, and then you say hello world, and then you use another left shift, and then you send this end line character, and then you put a semicolon. It's like, holy shit, that's a hello world. And they added a print line in the last version of C++, as far as I'm aware. I think it's still the last version. But they cannot remove the character streams and this weird thing because you cannot make a breaking change. And Rust and every other language has the benefit that hindsight is 2020, and you don't have to pay for the mistakes of your youth. You are free to make whole new mistakes.
Yeah.
That will be remedied in another language that comes 20, 25 years after it. I don't have the illusion to think that that Rust is the best thing for everything. It absolutely isn't the best thing for everything, but for the goals that it's set to do, that it will be the best thing for those goals forever.
Right.
It probably will not be the best thing for those goals forever. In 20 years, we will take a look back and see, okay, these ideas worked, these ideas didn't, and we will make another language that will be like Rust, and the cycle will repeat it. It's as repeated for the whole of history. Why do we have so many programming languages? It's because we understand programming better.
Right.
And that's that. Hope that answered your question.
Oh, it does. Yeah. It answered all of them. I've often heard the case made that the way that Rust does package management is not perfect, but it's much better than current package management systems out there by some people say it like by miles, leaps and bounds. And based on what you've described to me, because I didn't even know about like the yanking, for example, I didn't know you could do that and just kind of freeze it and say like no more, but still keep people who depended on it to be able to continue to use it. So I can see why that argument is being made. I understand that better, so that's good. I also understand, kind of to summarize what you're saying here, is there are some defaults that come with Rust, and the defaults are there because they are intended to lock certain aspects, certain avenues of bad outcomes off by default. And I think you kind of pointed to the idea that C could also have those things kind of locked off, but you have to go in and kind of, let's say, flip those switches as a way to say that. You have to flip the switch of C and go, I don't want this and I don't want that and I don't want, use const, etc. Right? So I will pose a question to you. I know there are some questions in chat, but since I am the streamer, you can all wait and suck it up, right? I want to pose a question to you. Let's say that you could only have one of two choices. On the one choice, you would have more people who were, let's just use C, but it doesn't have to be just C, but let's just use C for now because you kind of pointed to it. But you could think of other programming languages that might fall under this bucket. So you could, your one choice is more people use Rust more, and they use these other languages like C, for example, in unsafe ways a lot less. That's one button that you get to push. The other button that you get to push is people don't use Rust more, they actually use it far less. Or maybe let's do something extreme, like it doesn't even exist, but the outcome on the other side is that the people who work in C or whatever are at least 50% better, more careful, more thoughtful programmers than they are today, just as a whole. And even though there's quirks and nuisances when you have to write things out and expressively write lockoffs, they will go ahead and they will do that, almost as if you have a magic button. So of the two, which would you rather see? I hope that's a tough question. I've been thinking about this one. I hope it's a tough one, or maybe it's a stupid one.
I don't think it's a stupid question at all. But the issue with being 50% more diligent is that you are only 50% more diligent. And
Okay, well then hang on. Let me pause you right there then. What percentage would make that question worthy of you pushing one or the other button? You could go as high as 100%, double, triple, whatever you want. What would be that number for you?
The number would probably be not a number, it would be always.
Always? Like,
Uh,
I see what you're
and
saying. Okay.
it's, the compiler will make the correct choice always, assuming it is programmed correctly. It's a single point of failure.
Right.
But you have programmers working on projects, and for some of the exploits that were found in different products and large code bases, it took one person to make a mistake. And so long as it's not always, there will be someone who will make a mistake. And maybe if it's like a crazy high percentage, it will not be very many people at all. But when we are talking about the safety, you want it to be always, especially if it's critical software. It's if you know how SQLite is developed, SQLite is it's a very good example of a very, very, very robust C code base, and it's robust for two things. It's three guys who don't really let in anybody else.
Right.
So SQLite is mostly source code available. You can suggest patches to them, but they will most likely tell you to fuck off, or they will say, okay, that's a good idea. We will implement it ourselves. And
Yeah.
they also program extremely defensively, extreme amounts of testing. There is like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of tests for SQLite. The test suite is insane. It's absolutely insane for how small the project is. I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a metric that said that there is more tests than there is lines of code in the base library.
Yeah, I could see that.
I saw a figure a couple of years ago that was like 650,000 tests. It's absolutely insane. And so SQLite is a very, very robust piece of software. But I don't necessarily want to prevent people from writing C or from writing C++.
Right.
I want them to have an alternative in many cases, such that not that they are prevented from writing C, C++, or whatever other language, but that they are not pressured into writing those languages. It's like if you want to write C, or if you want to write C++, or maybe if you actually absolutely have to because you are interacting with a C++ code base and you just cannot introduce Rust into it, because it would be nonsense to introduce another language and have to write all the glue between that, do that. But I want people to have options, and I want there to be competition, because we have had a lot of innovation in C and C++ in recent years, and partly it's because there are actual contenders for some of the domains that were previously almost exclusively covered by those languages, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you come, because I have friends who go to the C++ committee meetings, and those people actually do not hate Rust at all. They talk about it a lot, and you know, the consensus is like, yeah, these are some good ideas, but we cannot just make sweeping breaking changes to C++. So how do we get some of the best ideas and make them available in C++ in this case, in such a way that it's still possible to, like, within the context of C++, which is incredibly difficult because it's a massive language with a lot of quirks and
Yeah.
decades of history. But they're actually trying. And competition between programming languages for particular fields is far more important than the individual languages, because competition breeds innovation, and that's what we are here for.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, that's good. All
By
right.
the way, it's not getting dark
Yes,
here.
I'm noticing.
It's not getting dark. There is a storm coming.
Oh no.
The sun should be out, but there is a very large storm coming, which is
Of
incredibly
course.
funny. But
Of
I'm inside, so it's
course.
fine.
It's Mozilla. They're sending something our way because they've heard us talk, and they've decided to use their weather alteration machine. Where's my? I usually I wear a stupid Super Mario hat when I go conspiracy theory Alex Jones style. That's mine. Okay, so I'm gonna save a question that I have for last. How about we go through some of the feedback and questions that we have in chat? There's like probably two or three ish, and you can talk about them. I'll just kind of bring them up here. So there's some chat that on YouTube, Vibav. He says, posting this for later. Lukash, since you are familiar with Bitcoin and Rust, or BTC and Rust, what is your take on the SUI project and Move programming language?
Well, I will probably disappoint. I haven't heard about either of those things.
No.
I don't know.
Okay.
If it's like crypto related, I'm an absolute luddite. You know, I only know Bitcoin. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I don't know very much about other crypto, or actually, at least here in Czech Republic, we say that Bitcoin isn't crypto, and we try to distance ourselves from everybody else.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry to disappoint. I don't know those things. Probably great.
Yeah, maybe that might be a good thing. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go, Vibav. Sorry, it's a non-answer, but there you
I
go.
apologize.
Yeah. There was a previous question a little bit higher up, which was something I can't find it exactly, and I don't remember who asked it, so I apologize to whoever asked this. Oh, there we go. Ghost Magic. What are the biggest / most successful products made with Rust?
Well, it depends on if you want projects that were written in Rust from the bottom up, or if you want projects that are either being rewritten in Rust and have been already completely rewritten in Rust, or are being rewritten in Rust. So with the most loose definition, Microsoft Windows is probably the most successful product written in Rust, as much as I don't like it.
Yeah.
Because Microsoft is spending terrible amounts of money to rewrite Windows in Rust, and they have made a lot of progress, apparently. If there will be a next major thing of Windows, which probably there will be, it will be majorly in Rust. They are heavily investing in it. And there are also people in Microsoft's high performance computing and cloud divisions who are writing like the infrastructure of Azure and that sort of stuff. They're rewriting it in Rust. Um Amazon has a lot of cloud products that are written completely in Rust, essentially from the bottom up. It's also incredibly successful. And you know, not Microsoft, Firefox also has significant parts of it written in Rust. It's a hybrid Rust/C++ project, more C++ than Rust, but still.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to exclude those types of projects, Fish Shell is a project that has been completely rewritten to Rust, and there is a um, fairly in-depth rationale in GitHub issues for why they did it, and why they decided that that's the way forward for them. What benefits of Rust they were looking at specifically. Maybe you've also used Alacrity, which is a terminal emulator. It's probably the next best contender to Ghosty or
Right.
GhostTTY. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, Ghost
They're
TTY,
both
I
good.
guess.
Alacrity is slightly faster, has less features. It depends on what you want. Other than that, we in Brains are a company that has been writing everything in Rust minus the front end since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And we have probably millions of machines running our code, and we have very, very many clients also, and our business is just built on top of that stuff completely. So it shows that you can run a fairly significant business on top of it. We are the oldest mining pool in the world. We have invented the concept of mining in a pool. We have mined the most Bitcoin out of any pool by virtue of being first, but that's besides the point. So, so there is a lot of projects that use Rust that are quite successful, but what you will see is that corporates are adopting Rust often incrementally. So maybe you have like a very large service that's actually a microservice architecture, and you are swapping the most performance or robustness critical components into Rust for one reason or another. I'm not saying that corporates necessarily make logical decisions. They don't. They also sometimes jump on the hype train, of course.
Right.
And we know that there are other stupid things going on in corporate settings.
Yep.
They see that Rust is good for making large projects that are collaborative and that will need to be maintained for potentially a very long time. And so large companies are investing into Rust heavily. Like IBM also is rewriting a lot of their infrastructure in Rust. I think they wrote something related to their AI services in Rust also. So that sort of stuff. Interestingly, for machine learning, deep learning, AI, that sort of stuff, Rust is not a very good language. The ecosystem just isn't quite there. But if you are a large corporate entity, you don't care about where the ecosystem is, you will make it because you figure out that it probably will pay off for you.
Right. Okay, that's a good answer there. The next question I have is on the YouTube side by Flow State. Is it easier to flow in Rust than C?
I don't think either of those languages is a particularly good starting language. Probably demonstrating the most basic concepts of programming will be done easier in C, but once you start doing memory allocations, it's like hell world to either side. So there is like two fundamental ideas that are most prominent with regards to, because I'm a teacher, an educator, to how you teach someone programming. And you can either go from the hardware, where you explain how the hardware works and you start with something that's very low level and you build up from there. Or you can go from the algorithm, where you explain what an algorithm is and you first try to foster algorithmic thinking and that sort of stuff, and maybe then you move closer to the hardware as you go on. This perhaps despite being a Rust programmer and a C programmer many years before that, I'm a fan of the algorithm approach. So I think that the first programming language people are exposed to, should abstract away all the details of the hardware. So it shouldn't leak any details of the hardware or implementation details, I suppose. So I think that back when it was widely used to teach programming scheme, the dialect of Lisp was a brilliant choice. I think Lua is a good idea. Python is a good idea. Even I would argue that deciding on a small and modest subset of JavaScript would be a good idea for demonstrating the basics of algorithmic thinking. And that's what I would teach to newcomers, complete newcomers, something that's actually very high level. Even though it's kind of a trial by fire, I think the Scottish guys at the University of Glasgow, or University of Edinburgh, I'm not sure if they still do it, but their introductory programming course was Haskell. So you straight up start with Haskell. And when you think about it, when you go from the math/algorithmic perspective, it kind of makes sense. For a lot of people, Haskell is difficult, like basic Haskell is difficult. Of course, Haskell is a very deep rabbit hole. You have a lot of extensions that can fundamentally change how the language behaves. It's difficult because they are poisoned by other programming languages. And if you're on a green field, I think it's perfectly fine to start with that, especially if you are building on top of the mathematical knowledge that the students can be assumed to have from previous schools. Okay, let's model some of the math that you were taught at high school.
Yeah.
And that sort of stuff. And once we do that, we will figure out how to interact with the operating system, and then we can interact with the hardware directly, and that sort of stuff. So going from top to bottom, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way to teach programming. So I wouldn't say that neither C nor Rust are good first programming languages, especially if you are teaching someone something as a first programming languages. I don't think those are good, because you really want the algorithm to shine through. You don't want it to be obscured, I believe. Better yet, you want it to be as declarative as possible, so that you are actually describing the ideas, not how to do those ideas step by step. Like if you are implementing quicksort by hand, you have some for loops in there. And especially if you're implementing quicksort as one function, you don't really see that there are some logical operations like swapping and partitioning going on. And I think that's a huge shame that you only want the students to worry about the algorithmic side at first. And you can, in parallel, you can teach them about the hardware and you can teach them assembly in a concurrent course. But I would combine it into a language like Rust or C later. Maybe third semester or term, or what do you call it in the English school system? So
Yeah.
that's my opinion on that, essentially.
Okay. There you go. Hope that answers your question, Flow State. Vibav has, I guess, the last question here. If a beginner wants to learn Rust, I hear the Rust programming book and Rustlings are recommended. Any other resources / exercises a beginner should use?
Well, there is also Rust by example, which has
Right.
a lot of examples of how you do things that you commonly want to do, or showcases some basic things. I have also written a book about Rust called Building Bitcoin in Rust, and it's a book that's meant to teach you both the technical fundamentals of Bitcoin, but also teach you Rust. So the prerequisite is that you should know some other programming language. That doesn't matter really which one, but I am not explaining what a variable is, but I will teach you Rust in that book. And that book is actually, the ebook version is free.
Oh, cool. There you go, Vibav.
You can just download it on the Brains website.
Huh?
Other than that, especially as a more advanced resource, is essentially everything that John Yangset did. So he has a YouTube series called Crust of Rust, where he goes in depth about how some things are implemented in Rust and why they are done the way they are. And he also wrote a book called Rust for Rustaceans, which explains slightly more intermediate to advanced topics. It's probably the best thing to read after the Rust book.
Okay.
Which is a great resource. Other than that, I don't really know. I think that's enough resources for starters.
That's pretty good, I'd say.
There are specialized resources for different areas of things that you may want to be doing in Rust. And you will probably know when you get to that stage that you will need something like that.
Good. There you go. Hopefully that's a good, hopefully that helps you out, Vibav. Silas on Linux, that's his username. Literally Silas on Linux, but he's chatting on YouTube. And he says only React ever. And Silas is asking to be permanently banned from every platform that I stream on. Anytime from now on, anytime I see the word Silas in a username, immediate ban. Okay, permaban. You dare not bring up React on this stream. How dare you, sir? Okay, I take deep offense to that.
Question.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, on YouTube you say, because it's fucking stupid. It's only showing me the best messages, not all messages.
Because of that, yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's
I actually know Silas. We interact on Twitter a lot. I like Silas. He's a cool guy.
Is he cool? He doesn't sound very cool to me, Silas, you big jerk. Freaking...
He has very interesting ideas about programming. Kinda, like a pure soul.
I see.
Untouched
I
by
see.
the outside world.
So naive and inexperienced. Got it. I've got you down pat there, Silas. Bringing up React in here. Only PHP ever. He just saved himself. All right. No permaban for Silas. He just saved himself. Okay. I have one last question, I think, and then we can kind of anything else that you might want to bring up or talk about, we could bring up. But my last question that I have is, what would be a bad or incorrect, I don't know exactly the right term here, I'm kind of using an improper term, but something like, what is something you wouldn't use Rust for?
Well, so machine learning, AI, that sort of stuff is one sort of thing. The ecosystem quite isn't there. Rust is also not a good language for explorative programming. So if you do not know what you are doing ahead of time, and you need to do some exploratory programming, there are better languages for that. Just eyeball it in Python, and then you can do it correctly, or not correctly, quickly later in a different language like Rust, perhaps. You can write front-end code in Rust.
Mm-hmm.
There are frameworks that are somewhat similar to React. In my experience, a lot of those frameworks are quite a bit tedious given the dynamic nature of the web. So you will find that on the WebAssembly platform, absolutely everything can go wrong and everything can be missing, and you just need to. You're kind of forced to handle that, even though maybe you will just want to say, okay, it's a web browser, just fuck it, you know.
Yeah.
I don't care, just crash and burn.
Yeah.
Which would probably be what happens in React or something like that. Even
Yeah.
probably not React. React is absolutely massive. In some smaller frameworks, React, I suppose, covers everything.
Right.
5 times over. So it wouldn't be my first choice. I have done front-end development in Rust. It's perfectly fine. It just takes a long time in comparison to JavaScript.
Right.
Although Deoxys Labs with the Deoxys framework, they actually implemented live hot reloading, which speeds up things significantly.
I saw that.
So you can eyeball a lot of the front end stuff now. Also, just experimentally, just changing things as you go and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
There are some industries where you cannot use Rust,
Mm-hmm.
which would be the automotive industry, as first and foremost, and that's because you need everything certified, and the certification takes a very long time. There is a company which, of course, has a lot of Germans in it, naturally.
Yeah.
Called Ferrous Systems, that's working on certification. But it's a multi-year process, and a lot of terms and conditions apply.
Yeah. It's a very restrictive space. Yeah. Yeah, for a good reason.
It's a very, very, very restrictive space. Probably, if you for Rust isn't that good for prototyping, because it forces you to handle correctly everything on the first
Right.
go. So if you have an idea and you want to push it out of the door tomorrow, probably you will not be using Rust for it. But you will not be using C for it, you will not be using C++ for it,
Right.
you will not be using Haskell.
I see what you're saying.
You will be using something that's very forgiving, very dynamic, and that has an ecosystem that solves everything for you, such as Python,
Right.
like or Ruby. It's dynamic. It will show how to do everything and very easily, but it's not particularly robust or performant. That sort of stuff.
Right.
If you need to interact with a particular platform, for example, you have a large .NET ecosystem or JVM ecosystem, you will probably want to reach for a language that's running on that platform, which is not Rust in either of those cases. Rust is a native language, C, C++, that sort of stuff. And another kinda domain, I suppose, that's let's say not quite there yet in terms that not very many people do it, is scientific programming or scientific computing, and data analysis and that sort of stuff. which incidentally is the domain of like Python, Julia, or Fortran, depending on how scientific you go, and what's the average age of the developer. Rust has a fairly new, very good data frame library called Polars, but the market is much smaller. Let's say it's not that many people are doing that, so probably you don't want to be doing that there. For game development, it really depends. It depends on what type of game developer you are. If you are expecting something in the ballpark of Unity, Unreal Engine, or Godot, too bad. You will not be getting that sort of visual, feedbacky, super easy way to develop games with Rust. No. There is the Ferox engine, which has a visual editor, but it's like not even remotely close to what the things like Godot can do yet. And also, it doesn't have the super quick prototyping loop that something like Unity or Godot has with Godot with GDScript, that is. If you are an indie developer who likes to take their time, you can use Rust. There are a lot of Rust engines that are really good, such as Bevy, with a Y at the end.
Yeah, right.
Which is extremely fast. It has a lot of features, but it doesn't have a visual editor, as far as I'm aware. And you actually need to do real programming to build up the game from the blocks. It will be cross-platform. It will be very performant. It's an excellent implementation of the ECS model.
Yeah.
Which is something that works really well with Rust. For those who don't know, I'm talking about the entity component system model. I believe it was invented by Thief, the game, when they were developing Thief. I think that was the first time it was implemented in a large video game.
I actually don't know.
Thief, the Dark Project. Maybe another game from this studio. Maybe it was System Shock 2. Whichever one of those came first. And the way that Rust does generics with traits and trait-bounded polymorphism really leans well into modeling ECS, because it leans far better into modeling ECS than inheritance-based generics or inheritance-based polymorphism. Because that's essentially what you are doing with traits is you are describing units of behavior and you are composing those units of behavior as you need, which is exactly what you are kind of doing with the systems, in ECS.
Yeah.
So it's super easy to model that, and it is very, very fast.
Okay.
If that's something that you need, it is, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good. Those are good answers. That definitely helps me too, because I have heard other people say, even if they're very say bullish on Rust, they'll say, well, yeah, but like there are certain things where you probably don't want to use Rust, and I never get down. I either don't take the opportunity, or the opportunity never presents itself to ask, what are those things? So that was good. Prosium clutches in. Prosium on Twitch clutches in with a question there. What kind of CI pipeline have you built at Brains, and how strict are you with example of forbids and warns, etc.?
Yeah. So our CI, or the way that we develop Rust in Brains, is built on Nix. We use Nix for two reasons: to provide system dependencies and caching, and also to make sure that we have what was the English word again? To have the same build every time from the same inputs.
I see.
Goddamn.
Like,
Deterministic builds, that's the word that I'm looking for. Deterministic. As for the components that we have in our CI pipeline for checking things, we don't typically. It's kind of depends between teams, but most teams forbid all warnings. Some teams also forbid all clippy warnings. What's universally forbidden is misformatted code, and of course it has to compile and it has to run. That's the minimum requirement so that you are able to merge something.
yeah.
So yes,
Okay.
we are pretty strict, I would say.
Yeah.
And it pays off. We are strict about other things, like we are checking the formatting of commit messages and what things are touched by the commits. We have forbidden merging via merging, and we only merge via rebase and some other minor things.
Cool. Yeah, I can see why you would want to do that. That makes sense. Yeah. Vibav asks if you use Nix as a package manager or do you use Nix OS as well?
So we have a runner with Nix OS, but we mostly use Nix as a package manager / build system.
There you go.
We use a package called Crane from Ipetkov on GitHub to build our Rust packages. So we are using it as a build system that way. We also have written Nix to build our operating system images, because we make firmware for mining ASICs, and they are running OpenWRT by default, which is what your it's what your router is running probably,
Right.
or modem. That those types of devices are running OpenWRT.
Right.
So that's what is there, and we made our own kind of Linux distribution called Brains OS, which essentially contains our firmware and some other bells and whistles, and is far more open than the default Chinese firmware, because the Chinese, they really do not want people looking into the machines.
Yeah.
So what we do is we do reverse engineering, and that means with Ghidra looking at binaries. It means using logic analyzers to sniff communication on the wire, and it also means hardware people sending down the chip dice and looking at them with a microscope, so they figure out, for example, how many cores are on each hashing chip and so on. And we have built an alternative firmware completely from the ground up in Rust. So we made all the data sheets, we reverse engineered with everything, and we made a clean implementation that doesn't depend on any Chinese code. And essentially, this is something that wouldn't have been possible, or it wouldn't have been possible in the time frame such that we would remain competitive if we weren't using Rust, because we needed the flexibility of talking directly to the hardware, so real-time embedded programming, while also doing the networking part properly, which is the exact opposite problem. That's asynchronous. You wait a long time on connections and that sort of stuff. And you need to have both of those things in one application, talking to each other. And that's very difficult to write quickly in C/C++ or whatever else. And there is also the huge benefit of there already being crates that had stuff that we need, for talking to I2C or I squared, right? I cubed, sorry, the protocol, and for having like the actual data structures involved in Bitcoin and the things that people have written already that we are able to use, a good logging solution and that sort of stuff, all that paperwork around it. Yeah. Yeah. I know how it's written. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly.
There's Silas on
Uh,
Twitch. He didn't get enough bashing on YouTube. He had to come over to Twitch to get more.
yeah. So it just saved us a tremendous amount of time so that we were able to do, when the opportunity presented, we were able to do it very quickly and actually capture a significant portion of the market that way.
Nice.
And that's something that wouldn't have been possible in C++ because we wouldn't have been able to depend on that much already existing code and to very easily distribute and share dependencies between different projects that we are developing, which is something that we are actually doing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own crates registry internal to Brains. So I suppose that's another benefit. Yeah, it's you can be very competitive when it comes to time with C and C++.
Mm-hmm.
Probably you will write a program faster in Go or Python in some cases, but with C and C++, Rust is very, very fast to develop in.
Yeah. I can understand that premise where there are certain languages or paradigms that lend themselves better to prototyping certain things out or being fast and just like showing that something can work as a proof of concept. So I get it. Okay, good. Yeah, Prosium, thanks for popping on. We'll see you later, man. I appreciate it. And thank you for the follow on the Twitch side, Silas. I know that on the other platforms, people do likes and subscribes and stuff. I just can't see it. The Twitch side gives me more interaction with that kind of information. So if you're dropping those kinds of engagements on the other platforms like YouTube, I still appreciate you. Just not quite as much as I appreciate it on Twitch because I actually get to see it and my dopamine receptors get hit more. So you don't, just saying, right? It just doesn't quite hit the same, all right? So there you go. Okay. I think I'm feeling pretty good about calling it there and saying that we've covered a lot of ground because I think we have covered a lot of ground. It's been good. And what I would like to do, if you're willing, is have you back on again in the future. I'm doing some deep dives into Rust, more technical, like things that I can and cannot do with Rust, things that I might do preferably in, I don't know, some other language, some internal critiques, things like that. And I would like to run some things by you and get your opinion on it, and we can do another interview and talk about Rust a little bit more and see what you think of my half-witted criticisms and see where it lands. But this was great. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the time that you took to come on and engage, on these topics, especially because some of the topics can be a little iffy at the beginning there. You could easily devolve into kind of weird stuff. Thank you, Silas, for the 100 bits. I appreciate it, man. And Misu on X, you're coming in at the end. So too bad. You're going to have to go on my YouTube and watch the live. Okay, it's free. It's on my YouTube live. You can go watch this again. Everything I do is free. But yeah, one more time, thanks, man. This was great. Thanks for coming on and giving your background and opinion. I think I didn't just appreciate it, but I think a lot of the viewers appreciated it because there is a lot to kind of unpack with Rust for good or for bad, however you want to look at it. There's a lot to unpack. So Okay, so I'm gonna let Lucas go here. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to switch my camera over, so you guys are gonna stare at me while I'm muted again for a few minutes. I'm gonna say goodbye to Lucas. Everybody say goodbye to Lucas. W's in chat for Lucas coming on and chatting with room temperature IQ high school dropout like me. So W's in chat for that. I appreciate all the support. So you guys just hang on. I'm going to choose somebody to be in charge of chat. You know what, Silas? You're new here. Okay. And you're on the YouTube side as well. You're in charge of chat. All right. So Silas on Linux is in charge of chat. And I'm going to switch my camera and mute myself. And you guys are just going to have to, I don't know, entertain yourselves. You guys are adults. Okay. You don't need me to entertain you. Jeez. What am I?
Goodbye,
Kids.
guys.
Yeah. Like, what the heck? All right, I'm going to switch over. Lucas, you hang on, and I'm going to then mute myself. Okay, there we go. I'm back, right? I think I'm back. Yes. Um, so that's it. That's the interview. Lucas was a champ for coming on here and talking about all this stuff, and some of the topics can be a little bit you know, you tread on dangerous ground, you know what I'm saying? But I think we did okay. Hopefully we didn't say anything that was like against terms of service. I don't think we did. I don't think we used any terms we shouldn't have used. We were pretty careful about what we were saying, and on purpose, right? Because it kind of um, programming is its own thing, right? So I'm glad we navigated those waters as best as we could. Hopefully that was all right. Lawler, I'm gonna time you out. I know you're a mod, but I will unmod you and I will time you out. Okay. My game's not happening in Rust anytime soon. Actually, it can't happen. I'm not gonna run WebAssembly with Rust on the browser. There's no way. It's not happening, all right, Lawler? I will unmod you and time you out. Um, Silas, apparently I need to talk to you. So watch out for a message from me wherever. I'll find you somehow. I'll track you down. Don't worry, Silas. I'll track you down. All right. Apparently, I need to talk to you. That's it though. That's it for the stream. Hopefully, that was informative. And we got to the bottom of some matters. I'm gonna have Lucas back on. I appreciate that Prosium was on yesterday, and I want to have him back on as well. And I think there's an unscripted. No, Lucas, stop, Lucas. Lucas, if you continue, I can't be held responsible for the actions of my mods. You can't. No, you can't do this. No, stop. Look, no. No. Rust to react. No. I can't even handle the thought. The mere thought. The imagine. No. No. We can't. No. You know what? That's it. I'm done looking at chat. All right. You're on your own. I disown chat. I completely disown chat. RUJST. That's right, Laughable. Yeah. No, I disown chat. What kind of a weird... You have to be a sick, degenerate scumbag. You legitimately have to be sick and degenerate to think that I'm going to use Rust with Mscripten to run React on the browser. Let's add classes. Let's add ECS. Let's add OOP. Let's add clean code paradigms. Let's put it under Scrum and Agile. We got to put up stuff on the Jira board, the whole 9 yards. We might as well just go all out at this point. You guys are sick. Okay. You're all twisted and sick. What the hell's wrong with you? Jeez. Now, okay. On that note, that was fantastic. That was great. Thank you again, Lucas. No, shut up. I'm ignoring chat. Shut up. So I will be back tomorrow with the Daily Tech News stream, where I spend about an hour. I try and keep it to an hour. It's been difficult with the amount of news to cover. Come back tomorrow for news articles that I go over, which are based on like cybersecurity, leaks, breaches, hacks, programming language updates. There's stuff we go over like academic studies, scientific studies on like how bad AI is for your brain, bad use cases. Sometimes we'll have fun at the end of the stream and we'll like try and get ChatGPT to create a picture of the universe. Sometimes we'll try and get ChatGPT to code. I have broken it twice because AI cannot code. I have proven that demonstrably live on stream. So come back for the Daily Tech News tomorrow. I sometimes do enlightened programming streams, which is on the Daily Tech News stream. I just kind of do cursory, like kind of surface level overviews of articles and scientific articles and statistics and whatnot. On the enlightened programming streams, I read the whole thing. We just sit there and we read the whole thing. Last weekend, we read the entire story of Therac 25. I'm gonna be clipping that up and turning that into an enlightened programming video. It's a fantastic story about how software literally 404s lives. If you haven't looked up the Therac 25 story, go look it up. Or if you want to watch somebody complain about it, it's on my live tab. I think it's last Saturday, I believe. It's something like that. And so we go over the Therac 25. It's an absolutely fascinating story. So we do that kind of stuff. And then I have the video game that I haven't worked on live. I've been working on it off screen. Laughing Panda on Twitch chat has been helping me with art assets, and I've been working on some of the mechanics, and I want to get back to doing that. So I'm going to do that maybe later today. I might come back later today. Okay. No promises, but I might come back later today, and I might do more C, WebAssembly, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, all vanilla with CSS 3D and pure CSS. Yes, we turn it into a 3D game with just pure CSS, just to prove that a high school dropout like me can do it. I really rub that in that I'm a high school dropout. Okay, because you guys then have no excuse. So, thank you for all the support. I appreciate anybody who does like the bits and the subs and all that. The financial support means a lot. I take a lot of my own time to put all this together and schedule this and find all the articles and put all the information together. It's almost a full-time job. I spend at least like 4 hours a day. I get up really early in the morning. I do stuff with my kid, or I have to, do things with my wife or whatever. I have a little bit of contract work that keeps the lights on, so to speak, just enough. I have to spend time finding work to kind of supplement the income because I pay for some things out of pocket for these streams. So your financial support means a lot to me because it just helps offset some of those costs. So I really appreciate that. However, the primary message that I want people to get out of my streams is that the tech industry is in generally bad shape and we need to do much, much better, and that we can. If people stepped up and took the craft more seriously, I think in 6 months to a year, you would find that this industry would be unrecognizable from what it is today. We're leaving money on the table. We're leaving hardware power on the table. We're leaving programming experience on the table. We're doing a lot that kind of hurts ourselves. And it doesn't have to continue this way. It can stop. We have a lot of smart people who can absolutely step up and make a change, but it requires persuasion. First, you have to persuade people that there's a problem, point to the problem, and then persuade people that it can be fixed. That's what I'm trying to do here. If you like what I'm doing and you like that message, you like that I argue with idiots online, which I do all the time. I know Lucas does. I'm sure others do here. I try and make the most logically based arguments that I can about programming paradigms. I try and back up my material with the stuff I go over on the Daily Tech News Stream, articles, scientific data, statistics, all of that stuff. If you like all this stuff, you like what I do, please continue to support me. I won't ask for your money because I know it's hard to part with even $5. I used to be homeless, lived in my car, slept in the parks and whatnot. $5 buys you like a McDonald's meal. I'm not joking. It gets you by for the day. Like, I'm not even kidding. So I can absolutely appreciate like a $5 donation can mean a huge difference, especially with programmers in this industry who are having a hard time finding a job. However, I will ask one thing of you as I close off here. Please hit the like. Please hit the subscribe. Please repost. Please share. Talk about it. Not because it boosts my engagement and I'm like, yeah, more people, more viewers and whatnot. I'm honestly not making money off this. I do this because I really, really care. And I hope other people care, and I think we can make a change. And that engagement, as much as I hate the algorithms, I think they're bad for society. It's the only way for me to expand this message and to persuade other people like yourself. And then you can go and talk to your colleagues or your managers or whoever is in your world and use the information that I'm sharing to, make some kind of a change out there. That's how these things, progress. So please engage with all that stupid algorithm crap. It's working. I have more subscribers than I ever thought I would. I didn't think very many people cared about the stuff I'm saying. It seems like I was wrong about that. I'm glad. So let's keep it up. Let's keep spreading that message. I'll do the best that I can, imperfect as I am. And so on that note, I'm going to end the stream. I might see you later for a chill video game vibe stream. I don't know. Okay. I do have some husband father duties I have to make sure I do first, right? And it's a Sunday. But if I don't see you later today, I will see you tomorrow for the Daily Tech News Stream. Tune in for that. Go to my YouTube, go on the live tab or on the playlist. I have a year's worth of all kinds of streams you can go back and watch of all kinds of stuff. It's been fun. It's been a wild ride. Stay safe out there, please. Okay? Stay safe out there. If you watch the Daily Tech News Stream, you know how much personally identifiable information is hacked due to insecure S3 buckets all the time. I am going to set up a counter. I'm doing it. I'm setting it up. So tomorrow there will be a counter. Days since last insecure cloud bucket. I'm doing it. And we're going to reset the counter every time we find more. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the support. Stay safe. Have a good day. Have a good night wherever you are, or whatever you're doing. Peace out, folks. Peace out. You know, There's something I almost forgot. No, wait, guys. Guys, no, wait. Wait, everyone. Don't go just yet. Okay, don't go just yet. Just wait. I'm looking at the Rust manual right now. And it says there are certain cases where you don't want to use Rust. What is that? There's only one case. In the case that your chat sucks, all of them, when all of chat sucks, you don't want to use Rust. And then what's this? By name, all the chat members who suck on chat? What is this Rust manual? This is crazy. Lawler, you suck. It's on here. Laughly, you suck. Silas, you suck. Are We Not Men on YouTube? You suck. Lucas gets a pass because he was awesome today. Code Maxer, you suck. The Flow State, you suck. Lightspeed, you suck. D-Diver, you suck. Who else do we have here? Zen Overflow on X, you suck. Let's see. Prospect Jump, you suck. Unholy Diver, you suck. Nyland Dude, you suck. Vibav on YouTube, you're on this list. What the hell? Apparently, you all suck. Really, really bad. All of you suck. I don't. I'm amazing. You suck. Deal with it. What a bunch of suckers I have on stream.